Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Julie Mann. I'm also known as the Habit Fixer, and I love working with women over 50 who want to regain their mojo and age well. And I do that through EFT, which is a very simple tapping technique, nutrition, skincare, and digital products. And today I'm really delighted because I'm joined by David Greenberg. And if you don't know him already, he's a sales coach. So if you really would love a breakthrough in your sales, then you're going to love what he's got to say. So I believe, David, you're going to be sharing one habit to double your sales in 30 days. Is that right?
That's right, Julie, and it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Pleasure. So I'm just going to hand straight over to you.
Okay, great. I really appreciate that. So again, I'm David Greenberg. I'm a sales coach and a consultant, in fact. So I do a little bit of both. And what I wanted to do is really just share with you and with the audience one habit that anyone, any business owner, any coach or expert, any entrepreneur can use to really unlock the next level in terms of their sales and their business. And it's this. And what's really surprising about this habit is I know for a fact from research that most people are not doing this. So it really can be a game changer. And that habit is simply to make a habit of listening to your own sales conversations, the recordings, and then looking for opportunities to improve even small things. Because, well, let's take a step back here. If I could just maybe provide a little bit of context. So why is this even important? So first of all, Julie, I'm sure you and people are watching, we all have favorite TV shows or movies that we've watched. And one of the reasons why you enjoy those movies is because the actors may put on a great performance. They are performing very well. They are very convincing, right? Well, sales, when conducted properly, is also a performance art. In other words, we're not just showing up in the call just casually, being ourselves, so to speak. Yes, of course, we are always ourselves. We're always being authentic, but we're performing. We're there. We're expected, the sales call is going to run a certain way for us to create an outcome, right? And the outcome's not always just to get a sale. It's to, in my opinion, to help the prospect make a decision. So that's kind of how I look at it. So we're there to help them make a decision and hopefully make the best decision that they can. But in order to do that, we have to perform, right? And just like any performance, we can get better at it over time if we have a way to gauge our performance and to provide feedback. Now, unlike actors who often have coaches, entrepreneurs obviously have coaches too, but in any given moment, if you want to improve your sales, the easiest way to do that without any other external influence is to simply go in there and take a look at how you did and assess yourself. And I think there's probably reasons why, and we can talk about it, there's probably reasons why people hesitate to do this. People talk about being uncomfortable, maybe listening to themselves, listening to their own voice, reviewing themselves. They may feel it's a little awkward. And I agree, in the beginning it can be. I totally agree. But however, if the goal is important, or when the goal is important, then this habit can really make a difference. So, it's the simplest way to think about it is, if you're conducting sales conversations, it's probably a good idea to be recording them, right? And if you're already recording them, and your prospects will understand them because you're running a business. And if you're already recording them, doesn't it make sense to spend a couple hours a week just going and listening to those recordings and looking and listening and looking for things that you could change, right? And again, this, we could dive in deeper here, Julia, but there are different things that we can look for in terms of it. But even just starting to get into the habit of observing how you perform on these sales conversations, or meaning the person who's reviewing their own calls, will be able to see what's going on and will start to identify those opportunities for themselves.
Wow, that's such a great idea. I guess there are going to be some people, perhaps, David, who have a problem with us recording a call. if someone we're talking to, maybe they don't want to be recorded. I guess that happens occasionally. Are you talking?
Sure.
You're talking about in the conversation with that person? You're talking about recording yourself doing the ask and doing your sales thing. You're talking about the conversation, aren't you, between you and a prospective client?
Sure. And in my experience, in a context which is already understood to be a sales call, what we could call a strategy call or a discovery call or any of those, in my experience, usually less than 5% of the people will have an issue with being recorded. And that's just the data that I've seen. And I think the reason is because they already know that this is a business context, and they already can understand and can appreciate why the business owner may want to have that recorded. So there's a very small number of people that for privacy may not want that done, and that's fine. In those cases, you can just turn off the recording, but it's never going to be more than, I think, from my experience, maybe 5%.
Well, you would know that better than me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do if I'm going to be speaking on a summit or something is I'm always going over and over what I'm going to say and looking in the mirror and as if I was talking to an audience member and seeing how I occur for myself, or maybe recording myself. And I always think that it's important that we're able to, it's not convince, is it? Because we're not convincing anyone, but we're able to, offer something that's so inspiring and attractive to the person we're talking to that they actually really believe it and go for it. And, so it is really important that we can, in a way, persuade ourselves to buy the thing because of the job that we're doing.
For sure. And rehearsal is an important aspect of it. So I would say, rehearsing how you perform on these calls is important. However, it's not a replacement for actually analyzing how you actually did, because in the end of things, we can rehearse a lot, but all that really matters is how do we perform when it actually came down to it. So I think both of those are great habits. So doing some rehearsal, some practice is a great idea. But I encourage people to review their calls just because I see that as the number one thing that people are not doing, even when they're rehearsing, right?
Of course.
So that's part of it. Can I just touch on what you said about convincing versus persuasion or influence?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So there is a big difference, because convincing obviously is, you're trying to push somebody into a very specific outcome, and it's usually based on what you want to happen. So it's almost a mild form of coercion. And so we definitely want to avoid this. And that is not the purpose of a sale or a sales conversation. Now, when it comes to influence and persuasion, influence is the word that I like the most. But it's interesting to note that influence can come through positive and negative influence. And what I can say is sometimes when a prospective client is holding themselves back from doing something that they probably should do and could benefit from, and the only reason they're stopping is maybe because of a fear or some other hesitation or something that's not really a logistical issue, then it is important that we make that clear, help them see that, right? So sometimes influence is going to feel uncomfortable to the prospect. In other words, the goal of a sale is not to always make them feel good. And this is actually one of the things that we can learn when we review our own calls, is to see, are we shying away from shining the light on the truth so they can see it, even if it makes them feel uncomfortable. And then, of course, it may be uncomfortable for us to point that out, because, it's gonna, more than likely there's going to be some resistance.
Can you give us an example, David, of a conversation where example of what you just said, where it might be a little bit uncomfortable? So
Gosh, let me just think of a good example. Well, let's say you're speaking with a prospective client who has already spoken with 5 other service providers of a similar type. This comes up a lot. So someone who's basically shopping around, okay, and they seem to never be able to come to a decision, to a buy decision. So they're obviously in the market for the service that you're providing, because if not, why would they keep speaking to people who provide a similar service? but yet they're just in this wheel of, information gathering, shopping. So unless you can somehow point out to them that, being in perpetual shopping mode is they're never going to solve the problem until they actually decide, then you haven't really helped them. But it could be uncomfortable because they may not be willing to admit that that's what they're doing. In fact, they may not have a full conscious awareness that they're avoiding making a decision one way or the other. Again, whether it's your service or someone else's, just making a decision, because ultimately that's what we're trying to help them do.
So what language might you use, David, to alert them of that behavior? What might you say in that case?
Well, we can try different things. For example, you could try to get them to describe their end game. So you could say, so what would a decision look like for you? What would the right solution look like? How would you know that you found the right solution? Can you describe that to me?
Great question.
Yeah. So you're applying a bit of subtle pressure, but you're also asking them a question to get them to think about, well, what does yes look like?
Yeah.
You could also ask negative questions, outcome questions like, what's going to happen if you're not able to find an adequate provider, 3 months from now, 6 months from now? What's going to happen as a result of that? What's going to happen if you're still not, if you haven't been able to solve this problem, within the next couple of months? So that's the cost of inaction. So you're bringing that up. That could be more uncomfortable for them because now you're putting them on the spot.
Mm-hmm. So it's really about asking great questions, really finding out specifically what it is they've got and whether or not it matches what you're offering, and addressing any concerns that might be in the way with great questions, perhaps.
Yeah, and again, if you think about that question, that's not a question that's I'm trying to get them to buy my service.
No.
Right? Because all I want them to do is make a decision one way or the other. If they decide no with me, but yes with someone else, that's great. That's fantastic because they've made a choice, and that allows them to unstick, to get unstuck from the energy that has them stuck with making a choice. And then they can move on to taking action based on the choice they made.
And it stops that waste of time, doesn't it, really, as well? The other thing is, what I think is really, really important in all the things that we do is not being attached to the outcome, having an intention and wanting to do our best to serve the person that we're talking to, but actually not being attached to the outcome. So if someone is really, really attached to, they've got to hit their sales targets and, having an intention to do it is one thing, but being so attached to the outcome that comes across in the way that they're talking to someone is obviously not great for the person who they're talking to.
That is totally correct. That is completely correct, Julie. And in fact, part of the sales performance, we can actually verbalize that. So it helps for us to say that. So one way that we can do that is towards the beginning of the call, when we frame the call, we can make a statement that basically says that in maybe in few words or more words. Like, you can just say directly to the prospect, look, I'm not here to try to convince you to buy my service. I'm here ultimately to help you make a decision. Right. So you can literally say that. And this is part of the performance. And this is why when you review, going back to the original habit, when you review your calls, you can see how well you frame that in the beginning to take the pressure off. Because on the one hand, you want to take the pressure off the wrong things. You want to take the pressure off them thinking you're there to get them to buy something. But you want them to be aware that there may be pressure in terms of them making a decision, right? So it's a subtle change, and the word crafting is very important. And that's why when you start to review how you do that, you can start to tweak it and make it your own, because it also has to be in your own voice. There's like an infinite number of ways to say the same thing.
Yeah, brilliant. You did say to me before we started this that if there's time, you could tell us another habit, and I'd really love it if you'd like to share another one.
Sure. That's a great question. This one's a little more technical, but I would say even if you're just a solopreneur, in other words, it's just you, or if you're a small business owner, again, I've seen a lot of the people in this realm, they don't really track and manage their conversations through some kind of system. right? And of course, as you probably guessed, I'm talking mainly about a CRM, or a customer relationship management system. And there's a lot of great systems out there, and there's even free ones for people to start if they don't want to make an investment. And even the ones that are free are very powerful. So the next habit is get in the habit of using your CRM, maximizing the value. So make sure you're using one to begin. But if you have one, just make it a habit to mine that, because that is a gold mine when used properly, right? Because our human mind, our minds, our brains are very powerful instruments, and we can process an amazing amount of data, but our brains are not designed to keep track of, and manage that amount of data, in terms of how many people we may be speaking with as prospective customers, or even as our customers. Our brains aren't built that way. So we need systems to help us do that. But those systems can also help us in other ways. They can help remind us when it's time to reach out to someone who, may be a good fit, but just wasn't the right time. So we let them rest, and then we come back to them. So unless we have a habit of creating follow-up processes and, ways of tracking where people are in terms of the journey from the first time we get in touch with them to when they may actually become a customer, then we're going to be from a sales perspective, you're not going to be able to help as many people as you could. So it's kind of another great habit to improve your sales and your ability to serve by just using a CRM and making a habit to really, max out the value of that system.
So I know you said there are a number of CRMs, but is there a particular one, David, that you would recommend? What do you use?
Yeah, I've been using HubSpot lately. I've used a number of different CRMs over the years, and there are a lot of great ones out there. So Close.com is a great CRM. Salesforce is a great CRM. And, there are others. I've been using HubSpot. What I like about HubSpot, and they're not, I don't get any kickbacks from HubSpot for promoting their product. I just like it. One thing I like most about it is they have a free version to start, and their free version is robust enough. It gives enough tools to the entrepreneur, to the business owner, to get value out of its use, right? And especially, if you're using it in conjunction with, say, if you're on LinkedIn, for example, like we are, and you use LinkedIn a lot, it works really well. There's a way to import all your contacts from LinkedIn fairly easily. That can be done for free. I mean, it takes a little bit of effort, but you can do it at no financial cost if you're up to the task, or you can hire someone to help you with it. But yeah, HubSpot being a free CRM to start, and then even when you upgrade, the pricing is fairly modest. Maybe $20 per month to start for the next level up, which gives you a lot of features too. So in terms of economy, it's a lot of value for what you get, and so that and the fact that it's fairly easy to use, I think, are the reasons why I recommend it if someone doesn't have another CRM in mind.
Brilliant. And that really goes back as well to, really making sure that you don't have a conversation with someone and then just think, oh no, they didn't want to buy. That was not great. I'm just gonna, that's it, and then just go on to the next, because there's, like you say, there's so much untapped potential in previous connections that we've been speaking to.
That's right. Just because someone doesn't become your client today doesn't mean they couldn't. And often people need time for a number of reasons. Timing is important in terms of where they are. It could also be the time to build up the relationship with you and with your brand so that they have enough trust to want to work with you. So that's another factor. So these are factors that, as the business owner, you can't control. What you can control is to stay in touch with them, right? Yeah. And also give them value. So another benefit of using a CRM, HubSpot being a good example, is it has integrated features to stay in touch, whether it means sending out, for example, drip emails, or just occasionally sending a personalized connection message, or even just assigning yourself an activity to follow up, because you might forget, right? So I'm going to follow up with them in a month.
And would you, at the end of the first call, would you ask if it's okay to keep in touch? Would you actually voice it?
Yeah, I think if the prospect hasn't already expressed that themselves, which they might in some cases, especially if they got a lot of value from the conversation. So if they left, let's say that they didn't buy, but they got a lot out of the conversation, maybe from the questions you asked, they're probably going to express that. But if they don't, then sure, it's a great idea to say, I'd love to stay in touch with you. Is that okay? Maybe if it's all right, maybe I can reach out to you in a month or two, or whatever timing you think is appropriate based on what they've shared. So you may have an insight into what timing was going to make sense. If they're trying to make a decision in a shorter time frame, you might say, is it okay if I reach out to you in a couple of weeks?
Brilliant.
Right. And is it okay if I send you the following information or the following value packet in the meantime? Or I'd love to send you this. How does that sound? Because you may have a welcome pack, a follow-up gift already packaged. And this is another great habit. Another bonus habit is having something to give everyone who comes on your calls, even if you're convinced that they may not become a customer, which is fine, right? You just want to give them something of value because that's going to, reinforce the relationship. And even if they don't become a customer, they may enjoy the value given so much that they're more likely to suggest, to introduce you to someone else.
Great idea. David, thank you so, so much. So for those of you who are watching and really want to have a breakthrough, then check out David's links below this video. My links will be there as well. Why not get in touch with him and find out a little bit more? So thank you, David, ever so much for your pearls of wisdom. And thank you, everyone else, for watching.
Thanks, Julie.